Imagine yourself inside an impregnable castle. Thick stone walls surround you, walls that have withstood centuries of attacks. Arrows bounce harmlessly off them. Battering rams barely scratch their surface. Scaling ladders, they're met with boiling oil. For nearly 1,000 years, these fortifications were the ultimate defense. But then, a distant rumble. The ground trembles beneath your feet. On the horizon, a metal monster appears on the battlefield. The defenders laugh at first. What could this strange contraption possibly do against walls that have defeated armies for generations? Then comes the deafening roar, a flash of fire and smoke, and suddenly, the unthinkable happens. Chunks of the ancient walls begin to crumble. In minutes, what took master masons decades to build lies in ruins. This monster, the cannon, the weapon that rewrote the rules of war forever. In the 14th century, medieval Europe was experiencing a military revolution, unlike anything seen before. Castles once deemed impossible to conquer became vulnerable overnight. The cannon, a seemingly simple invention, changed the art of warfare permanently. But how did this weapon come to be? And why was it so devastatingly effective? The answer lies in a fascinating journey that begins in ancient China and ends with the fall of Constantinople. A journey where science, metallurgy, and the brutal necessities of war combined to create something that would transform not just battles, but the very fabric of European society. Today, we're diving deep into the explosive history of the medieval cannon. We'll explore how a simple metal tube filled with black powder changed the balance of power between kings and nobles, made traditional military tactics obsolete, and set Europe on a path toward a new age of warfare. If you love history and want to unravel the mysteries behind history's greatest military revolutions, hit that like button, subscribe to the Medieval Archives, and don't miss a single episode. Your journey through the smoking battlefields of the Middle Ages begins right now. The story of the cannon begins not on European battlefields but in ancient China, during the Tang dynasty in the 9th century. Chinese alchemists weren't trying to create weapons. They were searching for the elixir of immortality. Ironic, isn't it? In their quest to extend life, they stumbled upon something that would take countless lives in the centuries to come. These alchemists mixed sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter, creating what they called fire medicine. At first, it was just a curiosity, a powder that flashed brightly when ignited. The Chinese primarily used it for fireworks and to scare away evil spirits. Little did they know they had discovered the substance that would transform warfare forever: gunpowder. Knowledge of this mysterious powder slowly traveled westward along the Silk Road, reaching the Islamic world and eventually Europe by the 13th century. But it was European metalworkers and engineers who saw its true potential as a weapon of war. The earliest European cannons were crude devices, simple iron or bronze tubes, sealed at one end, with a small hole drilled for ignition. They called them pot-de-fer, literally iron pots. Imagine a metal vase stuffed with gunpowder and metal scraps, mounted on a wooden frame. These primitive weapons were wildly inaccurate and had a nasty habit of exploding in the faces of their operators. One account from the Siege of Metz in 1354 describes a cannon that burst asunder and killed many standing by, and wounded many more. The gunners themselves were often considered expendable, criminals or prisoners forced into this dangerous duty. The life expectancy of early cannon operators was shockingly brief. Despite these dangers, European kings and generals quickly recognized the potential of these new weapons. They poured resources into improving cannon design. Blacksmiths and bell makers, experts in casting large metal objects, were recruited to build bigger, stronger cannons. By the early 14th century, Europeans had developed techniques for casting bronze cannons in a single piece, making them stronger and less likely to explode. The earliest documented use of cannons in European warfare was at the Siege of Metz in 1324, though they were more terrifying than effective at this stage. An intriguing detail most people don't know is that early gunners had their own patron saint, Saint Barbara. Legend held that she had been imprisoned in a tower by her father and later executed for converting to Christianity. Her association with towers made her the natural protector of those who worked with explosives. and many gunners would say a prayer to Saint Barbara before firing their cannons. As metalworking techniques improved, so did the cannons. By the mid-14th century, they had evolved from curiosities to genuine weapons of war. The age of stone castles and knights in shining armor was beginning its slow but inevitable decline. A new era was dawning, an era where the roar of cannons would echo across battlefields, and no wall, no matter how thick, would be truly safe again. In the year 1453, the cannon revealed its maximum potential on the world stage. Picture this: the mighty walls of Constantinople, standing tall for over 1,000 years, protecting the last remnants of the once glorious Byzantine Empire. These weren't just any walls. They were the Theodosian walls, massive fortifications with a double layer of stone reaching almost 60 feet high in some sections. For centuries, these walls had repelled countless invaders. They were considered indestructible, a testament to Roman engineering genius. But then came Sultan Mehmed II, a young Ottoman ruler just 21 years old, with extraordinary ambition and vision. Mehmed wasn't just any sultan. He was obsessed with capturing Constantinople, the jewel between Europe and Asia. And to accomplish what dozens of previous invaders had failed to do, he turned to the most advanced technology of his day: massive cannons. The star of Mehmed's artillery was designed by a Hungarian engineer named Urban. When the Byzantines couldn't afford Urban's services, he simply offered them to the Ottomans instead. Talk about a costly rejection. Urban created for Mehmed what was perhaps the largest cannon the world had ever seen. This monster was over 27 feet long and could fire stone balls weighing more than half a ton. Just imagine the scene. This enormous bronze beast required 60 oxen just to transport it to Constantinople. It took 3 hours to reload between shots, and when it fired, the sound could be heard for miles. The Byzantines watched in horror as their supposedly impenetrable walls began to crack and crumble under this unprecedented bombardment. For 57 days, the Ottoman cannons pounded Constantinople's defenses. Day after day, the walls that had stood for a millennium were gradually reduced to rubble. The defenders desperately tried to repair the damage each night, but the Ottoman bombardment was relentless. What makes this siege so remarkable is that it wasn't just about brute force. It was about technological innovation, making the previously impossible suddenly possible. Emperor Constantine XI, the last Byzantine emperor, knew his city was doomed, yet he refused to surrender. On May 29, 1453, the Ottomans made their final assault through the breaches created by their cannons. Constantine died fighting alongside his soldiers, and by the end of the day, the great city of Constantinople, which had stood as the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire for over 1,000 years, had fallen. This wasn't just the end of a siege, it was the end of an era. Many historians mark the fall of Constantinople as the true end of the Middle Ages. Mehmed, now known as the Conqueror, renamed the city Istanbul and made it the capital of his expanding Ottoman Empire. Did you know that some medieval cannons could fire stone balls weighing more than 660 pounds? These massive projectiles could demolish in minutes what had taken engineers years to build. The cannon had forever changed the balance of power between attackers and defenders, making even the mightiest walls vulnerable. So what do you think? Was the cannon the greatest military revolution of the Middle Ages? If you're enjoying this deep dive into medieval military history, please like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to The Medieval Archives. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you believe the cannon changed warfare more dramatically than any other medieval innovation? But success with these early cannons came at a terrible price. While these revolutionary weapons could indeed shatter castle walls, they were just as likely to shatter themselves, with devastating consequences for their crews. Picture yourself as a medieval gunner, standing beside your massive bronze cannon. Your hands shake as you light the fuse, then quickly scramble for cover. Why? Because there's a very real chance that instead of launching its projectile toward the enemy, your cannon might explode in a deadly shower of metal fragments. These catastrophic failures were shockingly common in the 14th century, as metalworkers were still learning the intricate art of cannon casting. The challenges didn't end there. Moving these metal monsters was a logistical nightmare. Take the infamous de la Grete, also known as Mad Margaret, one of the largest medieval cannons ever created. This Belgian behemoth weighed an astounding 16 tons. That's about the weight of 4 modern elephants. Moving such a massive weapon required dozens of horses, countless men, and specially reinforced bridges. During rainy seasons, these enormous cannons would often sink into the mud, becoming stranded for weeks. Here's a fascinating detail that brings home just how dangerous these early weapons were. Medieval gunners would often fire new cannons by lighting the fuse with a long pole while hiding behind thick walls. They would wait to hear either the successful boom of the shot or the devastating crack of an explosion. Many experienced artillerymen refused to fire a cannon more than a handful of times, knowing that each shot weakened the barrel and increased the risk of a catastrophic failure. But perhaps the most ironic danger came from the gunpowder itself. Poor storage could lead to accidental explosions, and many an army lost valuable weapons and crews not to enemy fire, but to their own poorly maintained powder magazines. One particularly notorious incident occurred when a single lightning strike ignited a powder storage in 14th century Dubrovnik, destroying not just the weapons, but a significant portion of the city's defensive walls. These early cannons truly embodied a double-edged sword of medieval warfare, powerful enough to change the face of battle forever, yet dangerous enough to make every shot a gamble with death. The age of the impregnable castle came to a thundering end with the rise of cannon warfare. Those magnificent stone walls, which had stood proud for centuries, suddenly seemed as fragile as sand castles before the tide. Imagine you're a medieval lord, standing atop your castle walls. For generations, your family had relied on these massive stone fortifications, some up to 12 feet thick, to keep enemies at bay. But now, a new sound echoes across the battlefield, the deep boom of cannons, and your once mighty walls crumble like dried bread. This revolution in warfare forced a complete rethinking of military architecture. The tall, straight walls that had been the pride of medieval castles became their greatest weakness, offering perfect targets for cannon fire. In response, engineers began designing new fortifications that were lower, thicker, and often star-shaped. These new designs would spread the impact of cannon fire and make it harder for projectiles to strike at right angles. Here's a fascinating detail. Some clever architects began incorporating sloped earthen banks called glacis in front of their walls. These banks would cause cannonballs to bounce up and over the fortress, rather than striking the walls directly. It was like watching medieval engineering evolve before your very eyes. The changes weren't just defensive. Armies had to completely reimagine their tactics. The days of long sieges waiting for defenders to starve were fading. Now, a well-equipped army with cannons could breach walls in days rather than months. This led to faster, more decisive campaigns, and armies needed to become more mobile and adaptable. Perhaps the most dramatic example of this transformation was the French invasion of Italy in 1494. The French army, led by Charles VIII, brought with them a new type of bronze cannon. These weapons were lighter, more accurate, and could be moved more quickly than their predecessors. They conquered more territory in 8 weeks than medieval armies had typically managed in 8 years. The old saying that necessity is the mother of invention proved true once again. As castles adapted to cannon fire, cannon technology improved to counter these adaptations, creating a medieval arms race that would eventually give birth to modern fortress design and artillery warfare. The age of knights and castles didn't end with a whimper. It ended with a bang. As we've seen, the cannon was far more than just a weapon of war. It was an agent of profound change that transformed the very fabric of medieval society. Think about it. In just a few generations, this revolutionary invention rendered obsolete the mighty stone castles that had dominated Europe's landscape for centuries. The impact of the cannon echoes through history, teaching us a timeless lesson about how technology can suddenly and dramatically reshape our world. Just as the cannon made traditional fortifications obsolete, we're witnessing similar revolutionary changes today. Modern warfare is being transformed by drones, cyber weapons, and artificial intelligence, perhaps as dramatically as those medieval armies were transformed by the first boom of cannon fire. Those early cannon makers might never have imagined how their invention would change the course of history. Their creation didn't just break down castle walls. It broke down the entire medieval system of warfare and defense. In many ways, the canon helped usher in the modern age, pushing European society away from its feudal past and toward a future where technology, not just brute force, would determine the outcome of conflicts. Makes you wonder, what modern innovations are quietly reshaping our world today? What walls, literal or metaphorical, are being broken down by new technologies? Perhaps we're living through our own gunpowder revolution, and like those medieval people, we're just beginning to understand its implications. If you've enjoyed this journey through one of history's most transformative innovations, you know what to do. Smash that like button and subscribe to the Medieval Archives. We're constantly exploring fascinating stories like this one, uncovering the hidden gems of medieval history that still influence our world today. Share this video with your history-loving friends, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to join us on our next historical adventure. Remember, understanding the past helps us better navigate the future. Until next time, this is the Medieval Archives, where history comes alive, one story at a time.